There are moments in life when the weight of the world seems too heavy to carry. When the storms of uncertainty and hardship rise, and the road ahead feels more like a mountain than a path, we often wonder where we will find the strength to keep moving. In times of struggle, it's natural to search for something, anything, that will give us the courage to press on, to stand firm, and to overcome. Perhaps you've been there. You've faced situations that tested you beyond your limits. Whether it's the loss of a loved one, the heartbreak of failure, the exhaustion of relentless responsibilities, or the inner battles of doubt and fear, it often feels like life pushes us to the edge. We feel weak, overwhelmed, and uncertain about how to continue. It's in these moments of fragility that we need something more than just willpower. We need strength that transcends our own understanding. We need a source of power that is unwavering, a source that gives us the resilience to persevere no matter how dire the situation may seem. The good news is there is such a strength, and it's not found in ourselves. It's found in something much greater. For centuries, people have turned to the life and teachings of Jesus Christ, a figure whose resilience in the face of unimaginable challenges has inspired countless individuals to endure their own struggles. Jesus didn't just speak of strength and resilience, he embodied them. He demonstrated, through his actions and words, that true strength comes not from human effort alone, but from a deep trust in God, a willingness to surrender, and a commitment to love and serve others. His life provides us with timeless lessons on how to find the inner fortitude to endure, how to remain steadfast even when everything around us seems to crumble. I end this exploration of Jesus' teachings. We'll uncover 6 powerful secrets that he left behind for us, secrets that hold the key to resilience and strength in any circumstance. These principles are not merely theoretical, they are practical tools that can transform the way we approach life's challenges. Each secret is deeply rooted in Jesus' own experiences, showing us the path to overcoming adversity through faith, trust, and obedience. So, if you're facing a difficult season in your life, or you're simply searching for a way to be stronger in the face of challenges, this message is for you. Let's dive into the timeless wisdom that Jesus shared, uncovering the secrets that will empower you to face any storm with unwavering strength and resilience. As we journey through these lessons, I encourage you to reflect on how they can apply to your own life. Let these teachings not just be words you hear, but truths you live by. Together, let's discover the strength that comes from trusting in God's plan, the peace that comes through prayer, and the power that lies in loving and serving others. Through these 6 powerful secrets, we will not only learn how to be resilient, but we will also be equipped to thrive in life, no matter what we face. Let's begin this journey of discovery together and uncover the strength that Jesus offers to each one of us. In every moment of his life, Jesus exemplified the power of prayer and the importance of staying connected to God. Jesus' prayer life was not only a spiritual practice, it was his lifeline to the Father. When Jesus faced moments of sorrow, confusion, and even physical exhaustion, he often withdrew to pray, seeking solitude to reconnect with his Father. This act of retreating for prayer was not just a ritual for Jesus, it was a demonstration of his dependence on God, his desire to align his will with God's, and his source of strength. A significant example of this is found in the Garden of Gethsemane, Matthew 26 verses 36 to 39, when Jesus was about to face the most difficult trial of his life, his arrest, trial, and eventual crucifixion. In the garden, Jesus was overwhelmed with deep sorrow and agony. He told his disciples, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," and asked them to stay awake and pray with him. Jesus was not just acknowledging his pain, he was turning to his Father in the midst of it. He prayed fervently, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." This prayer reveals the very heart of Jesus, his deep emotional turmoil, and his unwavering commitment to submit to God's will, no matter the personal cost. It's in this moment that we see how prayer can be both an honest outpouring of our emotions and an act of surrender. Jesus didn't hide his anguish. He brought it before God, laying it bare, but he also chose to submit his desires to God's will. Through Jesus' example, we learn the importance of surrendering to God in prayer, especially in moments of distress. Prayer is not merely a time to ask for help. It is an opportunity to express our deepest feelings, to seek guidance, and to find peace in knowing that God is present with us. Just as Jesus found strength through his intimate connection with the Father, so too can we find resilience through prayer. Jesus' commitment to prayer teaches us that we should never underestimate its power. In times of trial, our first response should be to turn to God in prayer, seeking his presence and guidance. Prayer is an ongoing conversation with God, not limited to specific circumstances, but woven throughout every aspect of our lives. It is through prayer that we access the strength to endure trials, the wisdom to make difficult decisions, and the peace to rest in God's will. Furthermore, Jesus' prayerful life reminds us that we cannot face life's struggles alone. We are called to stay connected to the source of all strength, our Heavenly Father. Through regular prayer, we cultivate a relationship with God, allowing his peace and power to sustain us through every challenge. Jesus knew that prayer was the key to resilience. It was his means of staying grounded and focused on God's purpose, even in the most trying times. Therefore, in our own lives, we can draw from the same well of prayer, finding strength and resilience as we remain connected to God. One of the most radical and profound lessons Jesus taught us was the power of forgiveness. Forgiveness is not just an act of kindness. It is a vital part of spiritual resilience. Through forgiveness, we free ourselves from the chains of bitterness and anger, allowing ourselves to heal and move forward. Jesus didn't simply talk about forgiveness, he demonstrated it in the most extraordinary ways. Even in the face of the deepest injustice, one of the most powerful examples of forgiveness is found in the moments leading up to Jesus' crucifixion. In Luke 23 verse 34, as Jesus hung on the cross, suffering in unimaginable pain, he uttered the words, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." In that moment, Jesus forgave the very people who were responsible for his torture and execution. Instead of cursing his enemies or demanding retribution, Jesus chose to forgive. This radical act of forgiveness speaks volumes about the strength and resilience that comes from choosing to forgive. Forgiveness is not about forgetting the wrongs done to us or excusing the actions of others. Rather, it is about releasing the burden of anger and vengeance that only weighs us down. When we hold on to unforgiveness, we allow bitterness to take root in our hearts, which can poison our relationships and hinder our emotional well-being. Jesus' forgiveness on the cross offers us the ultimate example of how releasing others from their offenses can bring freedom, not only to the one forgiven, but also to the one doing the forgiving. Jesus' ability to forgive in such a painful and unjust moment shows us that forgiveness is not just an act of mercy, it is an act of strength. Forgiving those who have hurt us requires immense courage and a willingness to let go of the right to be offended. It is a choice to trust that God will handle justice in his perfect way and time. In forgiving others, we are reflecting God's grace, which has been freely given to us. In our own lives, we may face deep wounds caused by betrayal, rejection, or mistreatment. The temptation may be to hold on to our hurt and demand justice, but Jesus calls us to follow his example of forgiveness. This does not mean that we allow ourselves to be repeatedly hurt or that we condone the wrongdoing. Rather, forgiveness is a conscious decision to release the debt, trust God with the situation, and find peace. Through forgiveness, we can heal and restore our relationships and, most importantly, we can protect our hearts from the corrosive effects of anger and resentment. Forgiveness, as Jesus taught, is a vital part of our spiritual resilience. It allows us to move forward, to experience healing, and to reflect God's love and grace to a broken world. It may not be easy, but through forgiveness, we find the strength to overcome adversity and emerge stronger. Throughout his life, Jesus demonstrated that true strength comes not from asserting our rights or climbing to the top, but from living a life of self-denial and humility. In a world where success is often measured by power, prestige, and personal achievement, Jesus turned these values upside down. He taught that greatness in God's kingdom is not found in self-promotion, but in serving others with humility. In Mark 8 verses 34 to 35, Jesus said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it." These words call us to a life of selflessness and sacrificial love. To follow Jesus is to live a life of humility, to set aside our own desires and ambitions in order to serve others. Jesus himself modeled this humility throughout his ministry. One of the most striking examples of Jesus' humility is found in John 13 verses 1 to 17, when he washed the feet of his disciples. This act, which was usually reserved for the lowest servant in a household, was an incredible demonstration of humility. Jesus, the Son of God, humbled himself to serve his disciples, teaching them that true greatness comes not from lording over others, but from serving them. He said, "Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet." This powerful act of humility teaches us that we, too, are called to serve others, especially those who may not be able to repay us or who may even be difficult to love. Humility is not about thinking less of ourselves, but about thinking of ourselves less. It is about recognizing that our value comes not from what we achieve or how we are perceived, but from the love and grace of God. The practice of self-denial and humility is essential for building resilience because it shifts our focus from self-preservation to serving others. In moments of hardship, when we feel tempted to fight for our own comfort or recognition, we can remember Jesus' example of humility. When we choose to live for others, when we take up our cross and lay down our desires, we experience the peace and strength that come from God's love and grace. Humility and self-denial require a willingness to embrace weakness, to let go of the need to control every situation, and to trust that God's plan is greater than our own. In following Jesus' example, we find a true power that comes from living a life of humble service. One of the most important lessons Jesus teaches us about resilience is the importance of trusting in God's timing. We live in a world that is often impatient, where immediate results are expected, and where we can easily become frustrated when things don't happen on our timetable. Yet Jesus' life demonstrates that God's timing is always perfect, even when it doesn't align with our own understanding. In the story of Lazarus, found in John 11 verses 1 to 44. Jesus delayed his visit to Lazarus when he heard that his friend was sick. At first glance, this may seem puzzling. Lazarus was dying, and yet Jesus waited for 2 days before going to him. By the time Jesus arrived, Lazarus had died. Mary and Martha, Lazarus' sisters, were grieving, and they didn't understand why Jesus hadn't come sooner. But Jesus' delay was not a sign of indifference. It was part of a bigger plan. Jesus knew that his Father's timing was perfect, and he knew that Lazarus' death and subsequent resurrection would glorify God and strengthen the faith of those who witnessed it. When Jesus finally arrived at the tomb, he called Lazarus out of the grave, bringing him back to life. This story reminds us that God's timing is not only about meeting our immediate needs, but about fulfilling a greater purpose that we may not always see. When we trust in God's timing, we are acknowledging that He knows what is best for us and that He is working in ways we cannot always understand. In our own lives, we may find ourselves impatiently waiting for answers, breakthroughs, or changes. Yet, like Jesus, we must learn to trust that God is never late and never fails to act at the right moment. Trusting God's timing requires patience, faith, and an understanding that our timing is not always aligned with God's divine purpose. But when we surrender to His will, we can rest assured that He is in control and that His timing is always perfect. Through this trust, we find resilience to endure the waiting periods of life, knowing that God is at work, orchestrating everything for our good and His glory. One of the foundational themes of Jesus' life is His perfect obedience to the will of God. Jesus' obedience was not based on convenience or personal gain. Rather, it was a response to His love for the Father and His commitment to fulfilling God's purpose. In every step of His journey, Jesus modeled for us the true strength that comes from surrendering to God's will, even when it leads to suffering. In Philippians 2 verse 8, Paul writes, "And being found in appearance as a man, He humbled Himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross." Jesus' obedience led Him to the ultimate sacrifice, His death on the cross. This act of obedience was not forced upon Him. It was the result of His deep love for God and for humanity. Jesus chose to obey, even when it meant facing unimaginable suffering. Obedience, as Jesus demonstrated, is not just about following commands. It is about aligning our hearts with God's will. In Matthew 26 verse 39, Jesus prays, "Yet not as I will, but as You will." This prayer shows us that obedience involves surrendering our own desires and trusting that God's plan is greater than our own. Jesus' obedience was a source of strength because it allowed Him to fulfill His mission and accomplish the salvation of humanity. In our own lives, obedience to God is a key to resilience. When we choose to obey, even when it is difficult, we align ourselves with God's perfect plan for us. Obedience requires trust, humility, and a willingness to put aside our own understanding in order to follow God's leading. It is through obedience that we find the courage to face challenges, the strength to endure hardships, and the grace to live out God's purpose for our lives. Obedience also brings peace. When we submit to God's will, we no longer need to struggle against life's challenges with our own strength. Instead, we rest in the knowledge that God is with us, guiding us through every step of the journey. The resurrection of Jesus is the cornerstone of Christian faith and the ultimate source of hope. In the face of suffering, injustice, and even death, Jesus' resurrection offers us the assurance that there's always hope for renewal and restoration. Through His victory over death, Jesus demonstrated that no matter how difficult our circumstances may seem, there is always the promise of new life, both now and in eternity. In 1 Corinthians 15 verses 20 to 22, Paul writes, "But Christ has indeed been raised from the dead, the firstfruits of those who have fallen asleep. For since death came through a man, the resurrection of the dead comes also through a man." Jesus' resurrection offers us the hope that death and suffering are not the end of the story. His victory over the grave assures us that, no matter what we face, we too will experience victory through Him. The resurrection gives us the strength to endure in the face of hardship, knowing that our suffering is not the final word. Jesus' resurrection transforms our perspective on life and death. We no longer view death as the end, but as a transition to eternal life. This hope in the resurrection fuels our resilience because we know that God has the final victory over all things. In the darkest moments of life, when we face grief, loss, or despair, the hope of the resurrection lifts our hearts. It reminds us that there is always a purpose beyond our current struggles and that God is working all things for good. Through the power of the resurrection, we are empowered to live boldly, knowing that death has been conquered and new life awaits. As we come to the end of this powerful journey through the life and teachings of Jesus, I hope you've found inspiration, comfort, and renewed strength. The secrets of resilience that we've uncovered, from trusting in God's plan to embracing forgiveness and the power of prayer, are not just words on a page, but living principles that can transform our lives. These teachings remind us that even in our weakest moments, we are never truly alone. God's strength, His love, and His guidance are always available to us. The path to resilience doesn't come from avoiding pain or hardship. Rather, it's in how we respond to them, how we lean into the presence of God, and how we allow His strength to empower us. Just like Jesus, who faced unimaginable suffering with unshakable faith, we too can face our struggles, knowing that they are not the end of our story. They are, in fact, the very places where we can find the depth of our faith, the power of perseverance, and the beauty of God's transformative love. So, I encourage you, wherever you are in your journey, to remember that you have within you the strength to overcome. You have the tools to thrive, even in the face of life's greatest challenges. And just as we've explored these powerful truths together, remember, this is just the beginning. There are many more stories, teachings, and lessons yet to come. If you found this story meaningful and empowering, I invite you to stay connected with us. Don't miss out on the upcoming stories and messages that will continue to inspire and guide you. Follow our channel, and together, let's embark on this journey of growth, strength, and unwavering hope. Keep seeking, keep believing, and keep growing, because with faith, anything is possible. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, may you find peace and strength in every step you take.